Israel tidak bisa bertetangga dengan Hamas, ini alasannya.
And on October 7th, Hamas terrorists carried out one of the most horrific terror attacks against Israelis in history. They used GoPro cameras, live-streamed their atrocities, which included torture, murder, and yes, rape and sexual assault. These are simple facts. The evidence of the pre-planned rapes come from video footage, photographs, GPS data from mobile phones, and interviews with eyewitnesses, as well as terrorist admissions themselves. Numerous independent news organizations, including the New York Times, CNN, the BBC, and others, have all reported on Israeli women and girls who were sexually assaulted on October 7th. But it didn't end there. Israel is now reportedly preparing for the possibility of the return of pregnant female hostages. Let me repeat that. The possibility of pregnant female hostages raped by Hamas while in captivity. According to a recent report in Israeli daily Ma'ariv, there have been comprehensive discussions in hospitals around the country to prepare for this scenario. Today, there are still over 130 hostages being held by Hamas. Of these, 19 are young women. We know that many of these women have been brutally sexually assaulted during their time in captivity. We know this because of the doctors who treated some of the released hostages, who said some had also suffered sexual assaults. We know this from the testimonies of some of the released hostages who said they had witnessed or were confided in by these girls about the rape and sexual assaults they endured.
ואני רואה שהיא נסגרת ושקטה והיא לא היא. תסלחו לי, אני אגיד מילים לא יפות, אבל הבן זונה הזה נגע בה. היה עוד מקרה של אחת שהגיעה שחשבו שהיא חיילת קצינה בצבא, והם עינו אותה לידי, ואני אדע לזה.
And this is not the only testimony, there are others. 17-year-old Agam Goldstein Almog, who witnessed her father murdered by Hamas in front of her and was released in a hostage deal, has been a voice for the female hostages.
הוא שוב פעם נכנס לך למקלחת, הפשיל אותך מהפיג'מה שנתן לך, תוך כדי גם נגע בפציעת הכדור שירה בך. זה כאב לך ממש, אבל השליטה שלו בך כאבה יותר. הגוף שלך כשלו, ככה הוא התייחס אלייך. נכון חברה שלי? ואת שם, אתם שם, לבד, כל כך לבד.
Today, nobody can say with certainty just how many women were raped or abused. Most of the victims of October 7th were also murdered. And the hostages are unable to speak, unable to share just how many times they were raped in their over 100 days in captivity. And yet, despite all the evidence, the world seems to have a problem believing that Israeli women were brutally raped. The world has largely stood silent. Women's rights groups choose to believe the word of the rapists themselves over those of the victims and the witnesses. It's a subject that has been quietly swept under the rug or flat out denied by pro-Hamas supporters. That is, until now. As time goes on, the evidence against Hamas and the scope of sexual assault is just too overwhelming to ignore. Certainly for Israeli women who refuse to stay silent as their sisters, daughters, and mothers were subject to the worst violence imaginable. And so, if you're watching this video, speak up, share it, don't stay silent. Israeli women, like all victims of rape, deserve to have their rapists held accountable for their crimes. They deserve for the world to acknowledge what they've been through, to believe them, even if they are unable to speak for themselves.
Hamas perkosa dan mutilasi perempuan pada 7 Oktober 2023, BBC mendengarkan kesaksian. Sejumlah perempuan Israel yang hilang sejak 7 Oktober 2023 tidak diketahui keberadaannya. Hamas gunakan perkosaan sebagai senjata perang. Apakah bisa bertetangga dengan orang seperti ini? Apakah bisa bertetangga dengan penculik manula? Apakah bisa bertetangga dengan penculik bayi dan anak-anak? Bebaskan Sandra segera. Salam damai dari Fakta Israel.